Today we are at the Bennington Museum, and I'm so glad that you're here to join us.
And before we get started, I just want to introduce us. I'm John Shanahan, the director of the Better Bennington Corporation, and I'm really excited to announce for the first time on public television, Mrs. Diane Perry. I guess you all know Diane St. Clair and Matthew Perry, who were wed this past week down in Mexico. Congratulations to you guys.
Thank you.
And so I thought you guys would like to know that, and I think you're first to hear it, because very few people know it.
Yes, we eloped, so very few people knew about it, except for John. And he's been waiting to tell you.
Mouth, so, yeah, don't tell me any secrets, everybody knows that. Anyway, we're going to get started. We're going to take you through the museum today. We're going to meet with Robert Wolterstorff, the director of the museum, and Jamie Franklin, the curator, who's going to show us some new exhibits, some of the new galleries. And we're starting here right in front of one of the lobby exhibits, but we'll have Jamie tell you about that. But this one's coming down within a week, so if you want to come and see the lobby exhibit, get here right away. But we're going to take you through the entire museum. Before we do that, though, as always, we're going to start the show off with a quick list of some events coming up that you got to get into your calendar. First up is this Saturday. You have like maybe 15 minutes to run out there. Is Vermont Green Up Day. It's the 40th annual Vermont Green Up Day. So call the town office at 442-1037. Pick up some green bags. Mark off the street you want to take care of, but get out there and let's make our state look as beautiful as the rest of the world thinks we are.
And keeping it green.
Yeah. Also on May 3rd, for the second year, is Youth Appreciation Day. This year it's taking place up at Willow Park, and that is from 12 to 4. Yeah. And for more information, go to benningtonyouth@gmail.com.
And there you are going to find music and games and fun and sports, very youth-oriented because it is Youth Appreciation. So.
And prizes. They didn't say prizes, but we know we're donating some prizes.
We're going to donate some bike-oriented prizes. So
you get your kids up there. It's for kids of all ages, and it's just to celebrate the youth in our community and to spotlight some of those outstanding students that we have in Bennington.
And I think it is rain or shine.
It is rain or shine. Okay. Unfortunately, it sounds like rain. But we're used to that, so just bundle up and get up to Willow Park.
Yeah, you're a Vermonter. You can handle it.
And then on Sunday, May 18th, is the Shires of Vermont Marathon, and that starts this year from Bennington College, and it ends at Riley Rink up in Manchester.
And actually, that's a marathon, so that's running.
Yeah.
They all run.
And that's it's the Marathon Plus / Taste of Vermont. When the race finishes up, or the marathon finishes up at Riley Rink, there's going to be a Taste of Vermont exhibit. If you have a specialty food or a restaurant you'd like to participate, it's only $25 a table, so going up there because they have quite a few hundred people that gather at Riley Rink at the end of the race. And more information on that is Steve Murphy, and that's S. Murphy, MURPHEY @RileyRink.com. Where you can reach Steve at 802-362-0150.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and what's up next on May 24th? You've been working on something for a
May
little while?
24th, since a year ago.
Yeah.
So May 24th, Saturday, May 24th is our most favorite event of spring, and that's Mayfest. Downtown Bennington, Main Street. If you haven't ever been there, please join us. It's so much fun. And we put a lot of time and energy into it because we really love it. How many vendors do we have so far? Over 100?
Yeah, we have about 120 vendors right now, and it's still only April. Although the show's closed out, we keep redoing the map and redoing the map. So if you've missed the boat, we do have room that we can squeeze you in, and give us a call at 442-5758.
And that would be as a vendor, as an artisan or a food vendor. But please come to visit us. We have live music, tons of live music at Mayfest.
Yeah, it's great. And we just, this year, I want to say this kind of blatantly and out in the open, all of our musicians play for free because we're an art and craft festival. We don't have a gate to charge people to come. It's free to come, it's free to park. So it leaves us a little low on cash to pay for entertainment, but we do open it up as an opportunity to showcase your band or your performance. And Diane, you've done a great job every year. We have some really high-end, great entertainment. And this year we have the Black Mountain Symphony. Some of you may have heard them over at Madison's on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, they were fabulous.
Fantastic. Yeah. And of course the Hill Hollow Band, which is one of our featured bands every year at Mayfest.
And that's with Barry Hyman. Yeah. If a lot of people know him, and he brings his band every year and plays faithfully Mayfest every year.
And then you have listed here the Wild Country Cloggers, the Crossover Cloggers, the violins, of course, by Anna. Anna, who has been at a lot of our events, puts out her or her violin case, opens it up, and every penny that she receives as a donation goes to the Second Chance Animal Shelter. So make sure you visit her.
Yeah.
This year, at each location where there's a performance, there's going to be a red bucket. The red bucket is a tip jar. We're going to have a little sign on it. So if you stop and listen to one of these great entertainers, please donate to those guys. They spend a lot of time and a lot of money getting here to perform for the community, and we'd love to have you support them, and it makes them feel good too if you're supporting them. So keep an eye out for those big red buckets this year. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
So in addition to Black Mountain Symphony and Hill Hollow, in the Cloggers and Anna, we have Immune Friction, The Lost. We have a new entertainer.
Oh yeah, like Mr. Whirligig. And he is from Massachusetts, and he's he's a children's entertainer. So he'll be singing some kids' songs, and we've never had him before, and he's just a lot of fun. So it's something new to Mayfest, and it's a whole different angle too, because he's a children's entertainer. So it'll be fun.
Yep. So it's May 24, Saturday, 10 to 5, Main Street. Y'all know the drill. This year it's not going to be snowing, sleeting, windy, rainy, ice cold. I can guarantee that. Even though we're heading that direction, we promise that it'll be better than it was last year. Then on June 7th is the Fight for Air Monument Climb, hosted by the American Lung Association. That's the few times a year you actually get to climb the stairs at the monument. A good time to do it because you also do it for a good cause, and that's the American Lung Association.
And you can do it either as an individual or they do form teams together.
How do you do team?
Well, I think you're going to contact this number, this email
Easy
here.
out. Okay. VT, as in Vermont, VT climb at lung, LUNGNE, as in northeast.org. VT climb at lungne.org.
And I believe that's going to get you to Kaya Morris, who was forming some teams.
Okay. Okay, so that's for the events. We have one more, and that's a new event this year, July 12th. It's a Saturday evening, going to take place on School Street between Pleasant Street and Main Street, and it's the Bennington International Motorcycle Club is hosting Bennington Bike Night. That night there'll be a lot of cyclists coming into town. They'll be gathering on and around School Street. There's going to be food vendors, musicians, vendors for bicycle parts and items and accessories.
Some raffles.
Plus all the cool the bikes and raffles.
Oh yeah, and they do invite you to bring your bike and put it up and showcase it or sell it. So it's a really interesting event to sell your bikes too firsthand. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. Everybody likes the bikes on Main Street, so we get lots of them.
Yeah, so that'll be neat.
The last item is the contact for that information, or for that event. It's www.b as in boy, L-M as in Mary, cvt.org. blmcvt.org.
That should be on your screen. Yeah.
Finally, Mother's Day is coming up. That's going to be Sunday, May 18th. And we just want to remind you, in case you didn't realize, there's really a thing going on downtown with, we have lots of salons, lots of spas, we have flowers, we have jewelry. We literally have everything you would like to get for your mother.
Yeah.
Spoiler rotten this year with a day at one of the spas, and you can get it from a few different places. She can go with her friends, get her nails done, get her hair done, get facials, get massages.
Yeah.
We got the whole gamut.
Yeah.
Plus there's a lot of wellness places downtown, which is just a great day for your mom, in addition to gift certificates for the restaurants or any one of the other things that we mentioned. So don't forget your mom. It's coming up on May 18th. Get down there now and get ready for it, and don't wait till the last minute.
Yeah, sounds good.
That's it for events and for stuff that's coming up, so thanks for staying with us. Now we're going to take a tour through the museum. We're going to introduce you to the curator and to the director of the museum, and appreciate you joining us again this month. Thanks for staying with us. I'm going to start with introducing you to those of you who haven't met Jamie Franklin. Jamie is the curator of the Bennington Museum. Jamie, thanks. If you would, just give us a quick introduction to what you have going on here.
Absolutely. Well, we always have a ton of exhibitions and programs going on. We're standing right here in front of a small installation called Boundaries in Flux, which features a small selection of recent acquisitions to the museum's collection of work by self-taught artists. So behind us are a selection of Sleeping Beauties by Paul Humphrey, who was a Vermont artist who created these in the 1990s. We have a work by Jessica Park. And then there are the works that were behind you when you were introducing the show by The Captain and by Richard Keim. And the museum has a long history of collecting work by self-taught artists, of course, Grandma Moses being the most famous of them. We'll take a quick look at the recently reinstalled Grandma Moses Gallery in just a few moments. But this exhibition is actually coming down next week. But we have two events this weekend on Saturday, May 3rd. From 2 to 3:30, we'll be having a panel discussion on outsider art, self-taught art, what that is and what it means in the context of the museum setting and in relationship to the mainstream art world. And then right on the heels of that panel discussion, one of the panelists, Carl Mullen, will have an exhibition in our regional artist program. And so it'll be a great day to come out, enjoy the museum, and see these things before they come down next week.
Great, Jamie, thanks. So stay with us. Diane's going to take Jamie through the museum and show you those exhibits and galleries he was just talking about.
Hi, I'm here with Jamie in the Grandma Moses Gallery. And from what I hear, this is a very recent, new, updated gallery?
Absolutely. And February, we reopened the Grandma Moses Gallery. It's been completely reinstalled. Of course, people here in Bennington are probably familiar with Grandma Moses, Anna Mary Robertson Moses, who grew up just on the Vermont-New York state border over in Washington County, New York. And she's been a real highlight of the museum's collection for a number of decades. And I've been here for 8+ years, and this was the first opportunity for me to really completely renovate and reinterpret Grandma Moses here at the Bennington Museum. And so people who are familiar with the gallery will notice there's not quite as much clutter. We've repainted the walls, we've slightly reconfigured the space, and we've actually gotten 4 real masterpieces by Grandma Moses on long-term loan, courtesy of the Gallery St. Etienne in New York City, who has represented Grandma Moses since she first became a public star in the 1940s.
Wow, and how old was she in 1940?
Well, she was born in 1860, and she lived until 1961, so she was 101.
Wow.
She didn't start painting professionally, so to speak, until she was in her mid-70s. She was discovered, a terminology that's often used for self-taught artists because they're not working through the mainstream art world, so somebody kind of says, hey, what you're doing is great. And she was discovered at a pharmacy in Hoosick Falls in 1938 when she was 78 years old. And then she painted for the next 20+ years until she passed away at 101 in 1961. And so this exhibition really highlights her as an artist. She has this incredible story coming to art late in life. She became a celebrity. She was a farm wife. She lived and worked on farms all of her life. But what I've really tried to do in this new installation is highlight the fact that Grandma Moses came to fame in the context of mid-20th century American modernism, and she was a modern artist. She used collage. She would clip out images from magazines, greeting cards, and then she would arrange them. Sometimes she would trace them. And you know, it's the idea of she's painting images of rural American life, like the farms that she grew up on in Washington County. She did live for a brief period in Bennington from 1932 to 1935, so she was familiar. We have 2 paintings which we're standing in front of by Moses of Bennington here in the collection. But her pictures are images of rural America filtered through her memory, filtered through her perceptions, and with her own very distinct taste. And I think it's important to realize that Grandma Moses was a very perceptive, highly sophisticated visual artist. And that's one of the kind of key elements that we're trying to highlight here in this new installation.
Well, that's beautiful the way you put that, because I don't really think about that either as being so modern when you see her work.
Yeah,
it's
no,
really
she was when she was discovered in 1938 by Lewis Calder, who was a collector from New York City. He went down to New York City, and it took a while, but there was a very distinct interest in the 1930s in self-taught artists, because a lot of modern artists were trying to to come to what they felt was a certain authenticity. They felt that the art world, was a little stultified, it was a little stiff, and they felt that artists who hadn't trained in the academy had a more sincere, authentic approach to image making. And so actually Grandma Moses' first exhibition outside of her hometown of Hoosick Falls, or the nearest real town to where she grew up of Hoosick Falls, was at the Museum of Modern Art in 1939. So it's this idea of, a rural farm wife who, started embroidering pictures and then started painting, and then she was really literally catapulted to the top of the modern art world.
Wow.
In the period of a year. And within a few more years, she was really a national celebrity.
Wow, that's exciting. And this gallery definitely is beautiful and shows a lot of her work and her diversity.
Yeah. We have the largest public collection of Grandma Moses in the world.
Nice.
But aside from that fact, that one of the reasons why we got 4 loans, which we can take a look at, is that she created close to 1,600 pictures over the course of her 20-plus year career as an artist. And there were slight gaps in terms of some of the major subject matters.
Okay.
And so the paintings that we borrowed, not only are they masterpieces, but they better help tell Grandma Moses' story as an artist and as a person.
Okay. So are most of her artwork then, are they scenes? They're like landscapes?
They're typically rural agrarian landscapes or some townscapes of Bennington, Hoosick Falls. Often the foreground often contains images of people engaging in various activities, but her figures were almost always traced. And so it's this sense of kind of bringing disparate images together into a cohesive composition. It's why I often think of her in connection to contemporary and modern artists, is because we live in a world that's saturated with images, and artists are often looking at the internet and other places and kind of trying to bring images together. And Grandma Moses was doing that, in the mid-20th century when we didn't have as much imagery, but she kind of brings it all together, and, it's images of rural life, but it's a conglomeration of all of the disparate kind of sources that she was compiling into these scenes.
Wow. So when the community does come and visit the gallery, the Grandma Moses Gallery, is there any highlights that you would like to point out to our viewers today?
Well, certainly they're the 4 paintings that are on loan that if they had been here before they wouldn't have seen.
Oh, nice.
They include Taking in the Laundry, In Harvest Time, Sugaring Off, which was the first painting reproduced in color by Grandma Moses in the 1940s.
Wow.
And Through the Window, which is an image looking through the Grandma Moses' window onto the Hoosick Valley with the lacy curtains framing the view.
Oh, I definitely want to see those.
Yes.
Thanks for staying with us. We're now on the 2nd floor of the museum, and I'd like to introduce you to Robert Wolterstorff. Robert, thank you very much for joining us. Robert?
Completely our pleasure. I'm glad you're here.
Good to hear, thanks. And Robert's the director of the museum. Robert, I'm going to ask you a few questions before we go further into the exhibits.
Okay.
Speaking to you about redoing the exhibits in the galleries in the museum.
Okay.
What's the basis and the concept behind it?
I love that collection. I love that question because it's really getting very deeply at what we're trying to do here. I've been here going on 2 years, about 20 months, and we've been changing since I got here. And it's not just change helter-skelter, but there's a direction to it. Bennington Museum, interesting institution. It began as a historical institution. It's an outgrowth of the Bennington Historical Society, which is still part of the museum. But we collected historical things, and historical institutions collect art by accident, as it were, portraits, furniture, landscapes, and we evolved into an art museum even though we're still very much a historical institution. So I've been trying to figure out, how do you put those two things together? How do you put together history and art in a way that's not arbitrary and just kind of pushed together? And it seems to me the theme that connects it all is that it's about creativity, that the history we collect is about the creativity of Vermont, how people manufactured here, the cool things they made here, the cool ideas that were innovated here, and art is just one aspect of that creativity. But we are very much a museum about Vermont. We're a museum of American culture, but it's You know, we don't aspire to being a great overall museum of American art, because there are those great museums and we can't do that now. But what we can be is the best museum about Vermont art in this country, in the world. Excuse me. So that's our goal.
Because people ask me, what kind of museum is the Bennington Museum? It is the best museum for Vermont art in the country.
Yes,
I like it.
the best museum. And we're the foremost collecting institution in southern Vermont, in that we have very large collections, which we add to collections of historical items and collections of artworks, so numbering about 40,000, more than 40,000 objects now. But we aspire to being the best museum about this issue of creativity in Vermont.
And so why did you select the galleries that you have? Or the ones you
well,
have?
so we've been changing, and I will say right now, an interesting but a sort of difficult thing about this museum for our visitors is that things slam together in funny ways. So we don't have the modern wing where you have modern art and contemporary art, but contemporary art is in a couple of places, and modernism is in one place, and they end up being next to traditional art. And we discovered through surveying that our visitors have difficulty with that. So we're working with this idea. I've been reading a lot about John Cage, the composer who loved accidental effects, and also Marshall McLuhan, who's probably a big, a name that people recognize. And McLuhan had this great phrase, information rubbing against information. And I think that's so much about the modern world, because the modern world is about the accidental discoveries you make at night. You're noodling away on the internet, and you go from link to link to link. Right. And they can be kind of accidental connections. And so our goal here is to make lemonade out of lemons and say, it can be a difficult museum, but as you come in, we're going to tell you what it's about is creativity in all these varieties. And sometimes the transitions will be kind of difficult and awkward, but it gives you the opportunity to have information rub against information, and you can jump from 18th century to 20th century, back to 19th century, and from folk art to high art, and I have a few examples of that to show you as we start walking, actually.
Well, thanks. I'm going to ask you that. And it's, as a person who comes to the museum, I don't always look for the link from one gallery to the other. It's interesting to hear
that it's not there. It's not that you've been missing it.
Well,
it's not there.
It's not there. Well, you've put it together. You and Jamie have somehow there's a connection, or even if the connection is the disconnection, there's a reason why you've chosen one gallery at the same time where you're displaying another exhibit.
Yeah, but I should be clear, and we're making lemonade out of lemons. This is not necessarily the idea we'd have. So say we had $5 million and we were going to reinstall the museum, which we don't have, by the way.
Somebody out there does.
But somebody out there does. And we were going to reinstall the museum. We might have a modern and contemporary wing. Yeah. So that would make it easier for viewers, but I got to say, for every 2 steps forward, it's a step back, because it might lose a little bit of that kind of weird excitement, the collision of different things together, which I got to say some people love about this museum.
Well, like we deal with the visitors a lot, and they love it, and the fact that it is different than a lot of museums, and then the fact that you have even Grandma Moses. That there's such a connection to this area, and you have such a the largest
in the world.
Right.
And so, I mentioned that we are very much a museum of Vermont creativity, but we are, the museum of southwestern Vermont, and we do look across the borders a little bit. So Grandma Moses technically painted in New York State, but we're the closest museum. She was painting not even 15 miles from here. Yeah. And as you say, we have the largest collection in the world, and it's really amazing to go to one place. If you went to a museum, you'd think it was great if you saw 3 Grandma Moses paintings and good ones. Right. We have almost 50 works, and at any given time we have about 30 on view. That's amazing.
In addition to that, which it is amazing, you also have her actual schoolhouse.
We have her, exactly, and we're trying to figure out how to reinterpret that. But one idea we're working with is having more hands-on art programs. And what a cool idea to say to your kids, you're learning art in the same schoolhouse that Grandma Moses studied. Well, art and mathematics and whatever she studied there, but that's a pretty potent idea.
Yeah.
And I don't think we talked about it in that gallery, but we have a painting of Bennington by Grandma Moses, which shows the museum in it. Oh, I mean, how many museums can say we've got a painting of the museum by Grandma Moses? We're here. We're in.
Thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome.
If you would, if you're going to start down, what gallery are we in right now?
We are in what's called the Center Gallery. That sounds a lot like a naming opportunity, doesn't it?
Yes,
for that
does.
that $5 million donor you mentioned.
I bet you could get the name for a little less than $5 million, but what the heck.
Yeah, I think that's true. We'll walk through this gallery and I'll talk about this gallery, but first of all, I want to point out the great painting straight ahead of us, and that's part of what we're trying to do too. We're trying to intellectually reinterpret the museum, but we're also just trying to make it look more beautiful. And one of the techniques we're using is to take great artworks and put them in very prominent locations where people notice them, but also use them to pull you through the museum, so have these long vistas. And that's a great painting by Frederick McMonnies, very important sculptor, also a very accomplished painter. A portrait that was painted in Monet's garden in Giverny, but was finished here in Bennington in 1902. And that used to be in another place in the museum. And as we strategized all of this, we said, we want that painting with the bright colors to pull you through the space. So that's one of our strategies. The gallery we're in is Vermont landscape painting, and almost everything in this gallery was created in Vermont. There are a few things created elsewhere, but mostly it's telling the story of landscape painting here in the 19th and 20th centuries. These are 3 paintings by Rockwell Kent, and we're thrilled to have them here because we don't own any of these. Indeed, we don't own any paintings by Rockwell Kent. But one of the things we're trying to do is tell more completely the continuous story, the continuous narrative of art and creation in Vermont. And we discovered that there are a number of significant gaps in that story in our own collections. One of them is Rockwell Kent, very significant, highly significant early modern painter working in the 1920s. And indeed, he was in Vermont working in Arlington for 7 years, and this had been known for a long time, but Jamie Franklin dug into it, did a special exhibition here 2 years ago. And when that special exhibition was finished and the paintings were all going back, we asked all the private lenders, won't you leave your paintings with us a little longer? And 2 of them did. And we're thrilled to have them here. And eventually we would like to add Rockwell Kent to the collection. Another very important gap is another Rockwell, Norman Rockwell in this case, who worked in Arlington for 14 years. And he was a good friend of the museum, and yet somehow we never acquired a Rockwell, and I'm desperate to bring one here someday. So that's a gap in the story which we are not yet able to fill. But Rockwell Kent, we're thrilled to have here. This is a perfect place to talk about this bigger strategy we're using to reinstall the collections, because it illustrates a couple of points I've made already, using great signature works to pull you through the spaces. So we have the Frederick McMonnies painting, big, colorful painting, inviting you, pulling you to join the Gilded H Vermont Gallery. But then you turn 90 degrees and you see this fabulous colorful painting by Paul Feely, which invites you into the Bennington Modernism Gallery. And in between we have a temporary exhibition, 3 Vermont Impressionists. So the other point that we can make right here is that things collide against each other in kind of sometimes difficult but also in very exciting ways. This museum is a mashup in it's a contemporary term. It's a mashup of different things put together in really interesting ways. So you have 19th century next to Impressionism, next to Modernism. I think that's really cool. So this gallery is devoted to Bennington Modernism, and it again illustrates a point I was making earlier, that we discovered significant gaps in the collection, and we decided to fill them by reaching out for loans. And in fact, we don't own any of this work because Bennington Museum in the past has kind of been defined itself, I should say, as a museum of Americana, of old American things. But wow, this great work was happening in our backyard, and so we said we're going to have the gumption to create a gallery and fill it with works by loan.
And so this is what we did. Bennington College in the mid-20th century was really one of the most progressive schools in the country, and was particularly strong in terms of its art department. And many of the faculty and students who passed through Bennington College in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s were really some of the most highly respected modern artists doing abstract sculpture, painting in the world. From Helen Frankenthaler, who was a student of Paul Feely, who was the head of the visual arts faculty at the college in the 1940s and 50s, to Pat Adams, who was another painter there in the 1960s, to Anthony Caro, who was one of the most important abstract sculptors in the world in the mid-20th century, came and taught sculpture and made sculpture here in Bennington in the mid-1960s, alongside many of his friends, which included Jules Olitsky. We have a wonderful loan from the Olitsky estate.
I love that painting. Just love that painting.
These were all artists that were trying to push abstract art past abstract expressionism. Olitsky, in a casual conversation he was having with Ken Nolan and I think a couple of other people, said his ideal would be if he could just spray color into the air and have it just be there. And so what he came up with was this technique called spray painting, where he would literally atomize paint and spray it onto the canvas, and it's as though you're looking at color distilled to its essence. And these artists, a lot of them are often referred to as color field painters. Paul Feely, he would use more distinct, organic, symmetrical, kind of solidified elements, but really paring down his color palette. Using color and form to convey emotions and abstract ideas. These weren't artists that were making pictures about something. They were making pictures that were intended to be kind of understood and taken in as works of art that only told you what you were willing to extract from them, basically, and what the artist had put into them.
And when we unveiled this last summer in July of 2013, it seemed like an amazing new direction for the Bennington Museum. But as I told people at the time, we've always been in the history business. We're about art and we're about history. We're in a nutshell about the history of creativity in Vermont. And so this is really doing what we've always done all along. It's just pulling it closer to the present. This was a distinct movement going on here, and you alluded a little bit to the artists talking together. There are a lot of layers to this. Some of them taught at Bennington College, many of them did, but not all. But they socialized together, they played together, and they talked together and conceived together, and then they all went off to their own studios and made amazing artwork. And in many ways, it is a distinct movement, and as art historians, we're hesitant to use the word movement, because movement connotes a distinct group of people who are trying to do the same thing, and yet in many ways this was a movement. It was a coherent group. They hung out together, and so we anointed it with the name Bennington Modernism. And at a point, Jamie and I said to each other, does anybody call it that? Do you remember what your response was?
We do. I mean, art historians are kind of infamous for making up terms, but I think Bennington Modernism is a perfect, succinct description. People might associate Bennington with history, Revolutionary War history, 19th century industrialism, but Bennington was at the core of the modern art movement in America in the mid-20th century, and so I think Bennington Modernism succinctly and accurately portrays exactly what was going on here.
Yeah, and Jamie points out it was at the core of the modern art movement in America. This was cutting-edge art, and in many ways it is the moment when Vermont truly leads the nation in the arts. And these were artists of huge national and international reputation. This really was a moment when Bennington leads the nation in the arts. So not just when Vermont leads the nation in the arts, but Bennington is leading the nation in the arts. They're doing highly creative work here, and it is at the cutting edge.
And this new gallery celebrates that and will into the future, because we plan to continue rotating these works, even though we don't own, we do own the one Paul Feely watercolor, which we recently acquired, but other than that, we want to continue growing this collection and continue bringing in loans so that people can come back again and again and see new things.
And one thing we're most delighted about with this is that it has led to a new collaboration with Bennington College. Bennington College very much was at the center of all of this because Paul Feely was the teacher there, and he was clearly a galvanic character. People just loved him. He attracted people. Though not all these artists taught there, they gathered around here. Bennington College was the center of it. And just in the last week, and I'm speaking now in April 2014, in the last week we've announced a new partnership with Bennington College where more and more will be borrowing works from them, and their students will be in our galleries curating work here.
Well, welcome back. My name is Jamie Franklin, and here we are standing in front of 3 Vermont Impressionists, which is our current temporary exhibition here at the Bennington Museum, or rather I should say the current major temporary exhibition. We always have things that are coming and going here at the museum, as you're starting to get a sense of probably. This exhibition opened on April 12th and runs through June 17th. But 3 Vermont Impressionists features the work of 3 artists who were living, painting, working here in southern Vermont in the early 20th century. It includes the works of George Loftus Noyes, Clifford Adams Byard, and Arthur Gibbs Burton, all of whom Noyes studied in Paris in the late 19th century alongside of the Impressionists. And this show is really about the role that Impressionist aesthetic played in America, but in Vermont in particular. And these are all three artists who aren't very well known today, but they were very highly respected in their in the early 20th century when they were painting and working. And so what we wanted to do was bring them together to help illustrate the role that Impressionism played in Vermont and give people a richer, more complete picture of what the art scene was like in Vermont in the early 20th century. And so Impressionism really was adopted as kind of the de facto style for landscape painters in America and in Vermont in particular in the early 20th century. And so Noyce, though he was based out of Boston for most of his life, he had family roots here in the Brandon-Pittsford area, just up north from here. And then Arthur Gibbs Burton and Clifford Adams Byard both lived over in the Wilmington and Newfane area over in the southeastern section of Vermont. And they were all painting the local landscape using the basic style of Impressionism, which includes painting in the open air or plein air, using a high-keyed color palette, trying to capture the effects of light and atmosphere as effectively as they could, and really capturing images of what we think of as classic Vermont. You know, you come to this exhibition, you'll see paintings of covered bridges, of barns, and while those have come to be cliched things, you have to understand that in the early 20th century, there was a lot of tourism, and so these artists were catering to people who wanted to bring home a bit of Vermont with them.
Before we finish up this show, and this show really could go on for hours, I would like to thank Jamie and Robert for giving us an overall conceptual of how you set up these exhibits and what we can expect to find here and how we get through the museum. But we want to add to those of you and those of us who aren't aficionados and understand, really see what's going on here, how we can get through the museum with and build a closer connection. Sure. You said there was a gallery guide.
There's a catalog for this exhibition, Three Vermont Impressionists. There is a gallery guide to the collections as a whole, which will give you a sense of what's in each gallery. Yeah. But what I think is important to understand is that we like to think that we have something for everyone. So if you're interested in history, come to the Bennington Museum, and I guarantee you'll find something that you're interested in. If you're interested in modern art, come. You'll find something that if you're interested in contemporary art, come. You'll find something that you're interested in. If you're interested in 19th century folk art, come. We have a great collection. I mean, if it relates to Bennington or Vermont as a whole, we encourage you to come. Give yourself an hour, 2 hours. You don't have to take in everything, but you'll find something that you love and that you'll take away with you and remember for a lifetime.
Thanks, Jamie. And just as a reminder too, today we've shown you, I think, a taste of 3 galleries. There's 13 galleries that you and your family or friends can come and take in. And as we're pointing out, if I'm interested in modernism, I can go that way, and you can go into the Gilded Age, or split up in the museum and enjoy what you find most interesting. Again, thank you very much for introducing us to it. Me too.
Is there a good way to contact the museum? Do you have a website?
And hours.
We, of course, have a website, benningtonmuseum.org. Join us there.
And your phone number?
It is 802-447-1571.
And I also want to add that they do host children's programs for the little ones out there.
You might have to say that a little louder. You don't have the mic.
We have programs for children, for adults, for everyone. Check our website. Keep it updated. Give us a call. There's always things to do and see here.
Jamie, what are your hours? Or Robert?
We are open
10 to 5.
10 to 5, 6 days a week. The only day that we're not open currently is Wednesdays. Wednesdays we are closed to the public, but from July through October we're actually open 7 days a week. So 10 to 5, 7 days a week, July through October, not on Wednesdays up until July.
I think I'll pull this all together with this one thought. We have a new moniker out there. I don't know if you've noticed it. The New Bennington Museum. Get into it. And that's all what it's about. It's a changing place, and you need to get here to enjoy it. And visitors may come once, but they should come again 3 months or 6 months later, because we are doing so much that's new and so much that's different. And we've changed once, but we're going to keep changing.
Very good.
Beautiful.
And on that, we're going to wrap up the show. We'd like to thank you for joining us for the May edition of Spotlight on Bennington. We've already decided that June is going to be a staycation event or a show. that'll help you and your family plan, acting like a tourist in Bennington. The museum will be one of the spots. We're going to stop back here for a quick shot next month. But just to show your family that there's a lot you can do right here in Bennington, and as Robert and Jamie were saying, you come here once, come a few months later, it's a different museum. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks again to the Bennington
Thanks,
Museum
guys.
Thank you.
for hosting
Thank you.
today's show, and we'll see you next month. Thank you, Diane, Perry.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll see you next month.
Bye.